Welcome to the Monday workshop of the Friendly Circle Berlin. Today's workshop is titled A Celebration of Family Resiliency, covering together as a family how to celebrate our strengths and refrain from pathologizing with Mary McGraw Gordon. Mary is a pioneering licensed advanced alcohol and drug counselor with over 4 decades of experience. As the former director of the critically acclaimed Family and Outpatient Program at the world-renowned Betty Ford Center in Rancho Mirage, California, Mary expanded and developed programs focusing on resiliency and recovery. Mary is an internationally certified alcohol and drug counselor, a skilled dance movement facilitator, and structured family recovery counselor. She also works with professionals and organizations developing programs focused on family recovery from addiction. In her work with recovering people, Mary brings a unique and engaging style that builds on strengths and honors each individual's unique path. So please, Mary, it's so great to see you. I think this is Mary's fourth visit already with our group. Very generous of you, Mary. Always great to see you. And thank you so much for doing this. And we'll put lots of information about Mary and how to find her in the chat during the meeting. Oh, and thank you, Mary. I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Patrick, and welcome to everyone who came this morning. It's good to see everyone. And I see it looks like I wish I could see the whole realm here, but it looks like up to 5. I've got to get my glasses on here. Looks like we have 5 panels. Whoa, that's good. And I do remember coming here before, and I see some familiar faces. I'm always very honored and feel very grateful when I'm invited to kind of bear witness that so many people are on a recovery path, whatever that happens to be. For some people, it happens to be, as Patrick said, in 12-step programs, but really basically the planet's in recovery from lots of things. So I wonder, okay, let me just do something here. Okay, no, can't do that. I'm trying to get the view here, Patrick, so I guess I just use gallery. Oh, there we go. Okay. And the other thing I want to say is that I'm just coming from, I did a weekend retreat. It's called Woman I Am Renewal Retreat. And so I said to Patrick, I said, I hope I'm sane enough to be able to be articulate during this, because I'm kind of tired, but I got revived this morning, and I got to thinking again what a blessing it is to be with other people in recovery. And as Patrick mentioned, my background, my professional background, I'm also in recovery. I got sober 1984. May 2nd, 1984 is my sober birthday. And I got sober in Maine. And then I moved to California in 99 when I got a job with the Betty Ford Center. But before then, I had a lot of my adventures in early recovery and a lot of my healing in early recovery in Maine and also Pennsylvania, where I went to the Caron Foundation to do some very deep experiential work on adult children of alcoholics work. Because I was, and I say this to preface what I'm going to say today, because I think it's important for us to recognize that we all can be in 12-step programs and working the steps and being with a sponsor and get it up here in our head intellectually, but not heal the down here, not be body, mind, and spirit, and not be healed from any kind of emotional trauma that we have accumulated over time. And so about 4 years into my own recovery, I was going to a lot of meetings, and I was traveling for the state of Maine, doing a lot of lectures and so forth. I was like workaholism and, just running ragged on the roads, but showing up at AA meetings and doing my steps, I thought, and doing all the things that I was told to do in 12-step meetings. Then one day I went to Portland, Maine for a business trip, and I went to my AA meeting down there. And as I sat in the meeting, I might have shared something at the meeting. And this woman who I knew, didn't know her real well, but I just knew her kind of professionally. And I saw her in the AA rooms. She leaned forward in her chair after the meeting. And she said to me, Mary, you need to go to the Karen Foundation to take care of your family of origin issues. And as soon as she said that, there was something that kind of lifted inside of me. And I didn't really, I mean, I knew I came from an alcoholic family, but I had, some shame about declaring that. And I thought, okay, I'm in AA. Isn't that enough? So she gave me some more direction after that. And I went to the Karen Foundation. And after I went to the Karen Foundation to do that deep work, I came back. I quit my job for the state because it was like insane what I was doing. I was all the time on the road and lecturing all the time. And I was doing workaholism to not deal with the pain, the sorrow, and all the things that were accumulating inside of me. Yes, I had the steps, but I had them up here in my head and not down deep. And spiritually, certainly spiritual awakening happened more after that. So I preface this talk about that because I think it's important at least it was important for me to recognize that you can you can look really good in AA and Al-Anon and ACA. You can look really good and you can say all the right things. But then inside or in your relationships, things are coming out, they're kind of spilling out. They're spilling out all over the place and you're not taking care of it. And you can't take care of it intellectually. You can know a lot. There's a lot of really smart people in AA and they know a lot of stuff and they'll say something and it comes across, oh, wow, they must know. But you're the one who knows inside. You are your own true barometer of what's happening inside of you. And I want to mention a particular book that I love, Divine Therapy and Addiction. And some of you already probably have it by Father Thomas Keating, who has died since just a few years ago. But he did an interview with an AA member and they went through all the steps together. But this thing I always use because he talks about instinctual needs. All human beings are deeply wounded. So I stopped using, first of all, in my own practice, I stopped pathologizing people by saying, oh, that's so dysfunctional. That's so codependent. Because it traps people in a kind of a shameful way. And I'll talk about that later. But he's referring to the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon, ACA. The first step highlights the fact that all human beings are deeply wounded. From earliest childhood, we start out on the path to self-consciousness without any idea of what happiness actually is, apart from the gratification of our instinctual needs for survival and security. We all need that. Affection and esteem, approval, and power and control. These attitudes are essential to survive early childhood. So we're all already survived early childhood. If the child didn't have the motive for living these instinctual needs provide, he or she would just roll over and die. So we survived that. But human nature being what it is, and the world being a hazardous place, we can't count on the fulfillment of our instinctual needs. And some children are terribly deprived in one or all of these areas. Everyone, of course, is deprived to some degree because no parents are perfect. Got that? Now, oftentimes when I'm working with someone or with a group, and this group did a lot of work this weekend on a family of origin, they talk about things like, well, my parents weren't alcoholics, or I grew up in a loving family, and then they'll go on to describe some things. That may all be true, but not all your needs were met. And you can tell that by how you are operating in the world. Then I would ask everybody, this is a wonderful thing that I use a lot with people because we get triggered by others. by each other and certainly by our families. I let go of my need for power and control. Remember, he talked about that as a survival instinct. Power and control, security, esteem, affection, and approval. And I accept this moment as it is. So when we're in the moment, that's the best way to receive information and to receive everything that we need in that moment to grow or learn or nurture ourselves. So I'm going to use that often. I let go of my need for power and control, affection, esteem, security, and I embrace this moment as it is. Now, I'm going to talk today about families in general. I'm going to give you some tips, some tools that you can use. Some of them they're all very simple. And some of you may say, well, I already know that. Well, that's good. It's good that you already know that. You can celebrate that. So we are going to celebrate the resiliency of families. And everybody at this workshop today is a resilient, recovering person because you already have a lot of skills. You already know things that perhaps in the uncovering of your own recovery and the work that you've done so far, you've discovered things about yourself that you can celebrate. And does that mean that you're processed completely? I had this Irish friend back in Maine, Maureen, and she says, what's going to happen, Mary? I said, what? We're talking about 12-step stuff. She said, here's when we're all processed, the day they put us in the ground. And I started laughing. I said, okay, all right. So that means it's a lifelong journey. And the lifelong journey does not have to be drudgery. It doesn't have to be, oh, woe is me, I have more work to do. And it doesn't have to be analytical, or it doesn't have to be all intellectual either, because that's what happens sometimes. People get too wordy with things. So let's take a look at the slide. Here we go. Walking with You on the Journey. That's the name of our company. My daughter, Peggy McGillicuddy, works with me, and she is the National Director of Children's Programs for the National Association of Children of Addiction. So you'll see her someplace along the road. All right, let's go to the first one. Embracing family recovery. Okay, right here. Just stop right here for a minute. So all of you, now I'm going to include in this, even though this particular slide says understand the disease of addiction. Let's say understand the disease of addiction, understand what happens with dis-ease of trauma that people have experienced growing up in families. Maybe it's not about addiction. Understand the dis-ease of some kind of shock that happened to people at some time in their life that they have not recovered from, but they just kind of moved on. Deaths, all kinds of things that people you just have to carry on no matter what. So we're going to understand, of course, the disease of addiction, but this can be applied kind of generally. And usually what is needed for family resiliency and recovery is also support for the whole family. Now, my experience in family program and with the counselors that worked with the patients was oftentimes the counselors who worked with the patients were so protective of the patient, as if for some reason they shouldn't be involved with their family members when the family was going through treatment. That's absolutely not true. Those family members have already done everything they could and to try to help the loved one get through their addiction or mental illness or whatever. So why shouldn't they be involved in the whole process? And so sometimes if people have their own unresolved family of origin issues, they don't want to work with the families. And the families have lots of skills already. Families have lots of ways in which they have managed themselves in response to their loved one's addiction. And some of those ways were uneven, and some of them were even. And oftentimes, in my experience with families, some of those families have started to go to Al-Anon before the patient or the person with addiction has even gone to treatment. And the other thing is sometimes the person never gets sober. So how are they going to help themselves? And how are they going to lovingly detach at times from that person? So seeking support for the whole family is critical, very critical. And then no condemnation, but acceptance. Would we condemn someone who had cancer, diabetes, some chronic illness? Alcoholism and addiction is a chronic illness. It's a primary illness, it's a progressive illness, it's a frequently relapsing illness. And if a person isn't intervened upon, they will die of this illness. So why would we condemn them? Even though there's more awareness today around chemical dependency and people who have addiction. Now I know in the DSM-5, they don't call it addiction anymore. They call it substance use disorder. Okay, that's good. But whatever they want to call it, it's harmful to the individual and the whole family. So seeking support for the whole family and not condemning each other or not condemning the family and not condemning the person who has it. Accepting it with love, but learning new skills. And then lastly, what else is needed is to begin a continuous journey of family recovery. Now, when my daughter and I did this workshop together, because she comes from the perspective of having grown up in an alcoholic family with two alcoholic parents, she would also contribute about how different, there are three, I have three grown children, how different people in the family came into recovery at different times, their own family recovery, because people started to talk. And the rules of addictive family systems when they're in addiction is don't talk about it, don't trust anybody, and don't feel your feelings. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. Those are the three rules of an addictive family system. But they're also the rules of other family systems that are in pain. Don't talk about it, don't trust anybody, and don't feel. We're fine. The great, we're fine. Everything's fine here. So I wanted to bring that up about, and then what happens when people start their journey of family recovery, they start to talk, trust, and feel. Now let's move to the next slide, which I have no idea what it is. Let's see what it is. Oh, relationships are about skill, not goodwill. You know, you might say to yourself, if you've been through different relationships in your life, well, usually we like to look out and say it's the person we were with. Of course, I don't recommend staying in an abusive relationship, all right? And some people don't even know what that is, what an abusive relationship is. But relationships are about skill, not goodwill. So once you know some of the skills of how to be in a relationship, you will then have a better experience of getting some of those emotional needs met. And no one is going to meet all of your emotional needs. They can't do it. But the thing that I often say to people who are, whether they're in like an intimate relationship, let's say they're in a marriage, long-term marriage, or maybe they're not in a marriage, maybe they're living with someone, maybe they're dating or whatever. You're not going to find the perfect person, but the more skills you have and the more you're able to have good boundaries and know what it is you want and need, the more you're going to be attracted to people who have similar skills and who know those boundaries, and the more skills you have about communicating what you need and what you want. And the best workshop in town for learning about relationships is to be in one. I mean, now some people will quarrel with me about that. Now, I don't mean like immediately when you just get sober, but people do it anyway. But the old AA adage is don't get in a relationship in the first year of recovery. But honestly, people do it all the time. But they often get out of them right away too. But that's just a sort of an aside. So relationships are about skill, not goodwill. Let's move to the next one and see what's up with that. Honoring uniqueness. Now, everybody here comes from some kind of family. And everybody here comes from a multicultural family. All marriages are to a degree cultural intermarriages. Now, I'm a white woman. My parents, my mother was 100% Italian. My father was Irish. My grandmother was an Italian immigrant. Um, so when I think about even that cultural, that's a degree of cultural intermarriage. And actually, my mother was shunned by the Irish. She was made to sit outside. My grandpa on the Irish side wouldn't let her come in the house and called her some rude names. And so all marriages are to a degree cultural intermarriage, and no two families share exactly the same cultural roots. And the other thing is, I've worked with people. It's really important to have some awareness about the way and the approach with families that are not within your awareness. Let's say you're going to an AA meeting, and you know, obviously there's many cultures here today. You're not going to hear things the same way somebody from a different culture hears them. And then there are certain rules in not in a marriage, but certain rules in certain cultures that are sort of ingrained that have to be looked at in order to honor the uniqueness of that family. When we would have families come in from different parts of the country or out of the country, and different races and different cultures, ethnicities and religions and so forth, we always, as a staff, would talk about who is the best counselor to work with that group, and also to talk to the whole group how we're going to do that to honor all the different ways in which people are alike, and then the ways in which they're different. Now, when it comes to addiction, of course, the impact of addiction, excuse me, I just have to have a little water here. The impact of addiction is so powerful that there's a lot of similarities no matter what the culture is. But the way that the family handles those symptoms is different because of their culture. Like, for instance, I was working with a Vietnamese family, and one of the things about, and I was told by the sister of the brother who was impacted that, you know, they don't talk outside of the family about this because that brings shame to the family. So that's important to know. And not just for me to know that as a therapist, but for us to know that within our community of recovery too, that we can't impose whatever it is that we think a person needs. We need to be able to find common ground and use the best of what we know about recovery. All right, let's go to the next one. Continuing the conversation. Words have power. This is from Harriet Lerner, The Dance of Connection. Having an authentic voice doesn't mean that we say everything we think or express whatever we feel. I want you, that's a really important one to know, because we kind of get used to going to an AA meeting where everybody says whatever they want, whatever they're thinking or whatever they're feeling. Well, that may be appropriate sometimes, but sometimes it's better to use that authentic voice with a trusted sponsor, with some outside group of people that you know, rather than in the halls of 12-step meetings. Because in the halls of 12-step meetings is not necessarily the bastion of mental health. So you're going to have all kinds of people there, and different kinds of conversations. So make sure you guard your words and talk. I'm not saying stop talking, but what I'm saying is be aware of that, what you think, and you don't have to express whatever you feel and think at all times at an AA meeting or anywhere. Now, if you have if you're going to some counseling or in a group or something, hopefully safety has been created within the group and with your whoever's facilitating the group, that you can use your authentic voice to say and think whatever you feel. That's important, because part of healing from any kind of trauma, we need to be able to name it and claim it and heal from it. So words have power. And also words have power in the context of this. And I've heard this before of women who come into recovery. I'm particularly, I let women know this a lot. And you hear sometimes unenlightened men refer to women in a way that is uh, derogatory. It happens. Maybe calling a woman promiscuous, or even some of the language in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's one in particular where it talks about, oh, are you lustful enough to rape? And I talked to this man after a meeting one time, and as he was talking about it in a different kind of way, he was saying, oh yeah, well, and I said, rape is a crime. And then we had a little discussion about that. And he said, yeah, I know. It was in reference to what he had said at the meeting. So it's important to have conversations with each other about how something might land on a family member who's in treatment, for instance, or going to Al-Anon meetings, or anyone in any of the 12-step meetings. ACA, I know there's ACA folks here too. So words have power. Maybe in the conversation or the Q&A, we might expand that a little bit, but let's go to the next one. Okay, this is a tip about pausing when agitated. I don't know about you, but if I haven't done my 11th step in the morning, I take a nice long 11-step meditation and get myself centered and maybe make my plan for whatever meeting I'm going to, or if I'm working with clients, I have a supervisor that I talk to. But if I haven't taken care of myself in all those usual ways, and of course, all of you who go to 12 step, you've heard the one, or don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. That's an important one. But then if you think you want to react to something, is what I'm about to say thoughtful? Is it honest? Is it intelligent? Now, this next one is the big one. Is it necessary? Now, I grew up in a big family. I thought every conversation we had was necessary because everybody was trying to get their word in edgewise. There were 6 of us, and we got kind of loud. And I had the 4 brothers, and my sister and I were kind of overpowered by them. So we always thought everything was necessary to say. And then, is what I'm about to say kind? Now, this conversation tip, pause when agitated, also applies to my emotional well-being at the time. This is how I can kind of monitor my emotional well-being is, wow, phew. Do I feel kind right now? Or do I feel, if I'm feeling agitated, what do I need? Do I need to call my sponsor? Do I need to check in with my group? Do I need to read some meditation? Do I need to take a walk? Do I sing a song? Write a poem? So we need to do a lot of self-care around that. Conversations would be a lot healthier if all of us did this frequently. It's so simple that it's like, oh, okay. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Thoughtful honestness. Okay, conversation tip. Avoid the 5 C's. Competing, comparing, condemning, controlling, and criticizing. Now, on this one, I think about if you're recovering from adult children issues, and you come from, it doesn't matter what kind of, let's say, well, I've worked with people who were only children too. So the competition could be with the parents. The competition could be in school. But if we feel like we have to compete, then where is that coming from? A lot of these things stem from those issues I talked about earlier that are unresolved or unhealed and that need healing in order for us to integrate all of the 12 steps and go toward emotional sobriety and continue our spiritual awakening. Okay, so competing and then comparing. Oh yeah, somebody is sober, somebody is sober a year and I'm only got 6 months, and then you see another person who's 6 months and they seem very, very much more lighter and a lot more grateful than you. That's really dangerous for anybody, whether it's alcoholic, Al-Anon, ACA, any of the anonymous programs, or anybody who's dealing with mental health issues. If we start comparing ourselves to others, we're not going to heal. We need to stay within our own authentic self, have a circle of people that we can talk to about it, and have some professionals as needed. And so comparing is dangerous, so avoid that one. And then avoid condemning. Avoid condemning yourself. I didn't do that right, or I wish I had. Well, you start comparing, and then you condemn yourself for not living up to whatever idealistic recovery you think you need to be at. And then controlling, that's a big one. Controlling. When you feel the need to jump in and try to take care of something for somebody, control the outcome of something, that's when you need to look inside and think about, I let go of my need for power and control, esteem, security, and affection, and I embrace this moment as it is. That one, with a deep breath, is a powerful tool. I let go of my need for power and control, esteem, affection, and security, and I embrace this moment as it is. That is a beautiful one to do in intimate relationships, and in friendships, and in sponsor-sponsee relationships, and in adults and children relationships, and adult and adolescent relationships, because adolescents can push a lot of buttons, and then in adult to adult. And then lastly, another one to avoid, of course, is criticizing. So criticizing, see, now I did come from a family where there was a lot of criticism. And the other one I want to mention, even it's not a C one though, is sarcasm. Because on the weekend retreat, we had quite a discussion about sarcasm, and sarcasm comes from the Greek word. If you go to Al-Anon, you probably already heard this one, from the Greek word to tear flesh. And sarcasm can be abusive if it's used in a certain way. I'm not going to say all the time, but sarcasm, a lot of women who get into abusive relationships and their partner's using sarcasm on them, that's abusive. So, but you have to kind of parse that one a little bit and break it down to see, is this satire, or is this sarcasm, or is this something playful, or is it something harmful? So that one, the sarcasm needs to be looked at least. So avoid those 5 C's. Let's go on to the next one. What we're really talking about here are the tools that we all need as a family member to heal. So where do we start? Everybody here has had broken dreams, hearts, missed connections. All of that takes time, patience, and the learning of new skills. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Thank you for, by the way, doing the slides. I appreciate it. So here are the guidelines. We begin the conversation. We talk and learn the language of feelings. Now, when you say, I feel that, that's not a feeling. It's not a feeling. I feel sad is a feeling. I feel angry. I feel bewildered. I feel enraged. I feel compassionate. I feel very sensitive, etc., etc. Or I feel confused. Now, oftentimes in the redirecting of conversation, and when I'm working with a group and somebody starts with, I feel that, what they've already done is transfer their feeling that they have. That's why I do body work. They've transferred the feeling that they're having into a thought. No, I'm not saying that's bad, but the really important thing is to move that thought into the body. The body never lies, and the body never forgets. So I'm going to tell you, sometimes you feel your stomach turn about something, or you feel tightness in your chest, or your throat is constricted. That's your body telling you need to say something. You may not even know what it is, But if you start to talk, you begin the conversation, you're going to learn the language of feelings. All of these things, even though they seem simple, sometimes we complicate things so much and analyze things instead of let's just learn this one skill and I bet it'll change my life. Now, I'll give you an example about that beginning conversation and talking. There was a particular person, client from the past that I work with, who always felt the need to explain everything. Explain, maybe he might share something and then he'd have to explain everything about it, and it would be a lengthy explanation. And where that comes from is the adjusted child place, the place in us that didn't get heard and had to explain over and over again, whether it's to parents or other adults in our life. So while on the one hand it seems it's not that important, it is important to learn the language and then to listen to each other and how we're talking to each other. Are we really having a heart-to-heart conversation, or are we having a head-to-head conversation? And that will move you in many, many ways to more emotional sobriety. We trust again. Trust our gut, learn new skills, and letting go of the old. Now, trusting in the gut is really important, again, because a lot of times something doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know, you go to a group or you're at the grocery store, you have this funny feeling about something, and then you move away from a situation because you trusted your gut. I don't know what that was about, but I had a funny feeling. And then I left that. Trust the gut. You don't have to have a reason and say or shame yourself for it or judge yourself for it. Just trust it. And then, of course, previous slides talked about learning new skills and letting go of the old. We may have a lot of old habits, ways in which we have talked to one another or talked to our family. Now, I have my two brothers and my sister. I have a sister in recovery, and my two brothers don't need recovery, but they have other things that they're supported by in their life. So we have about once every 2 weeks, we have one of those conversations where you add a person to the line, and we talk about nothing really in particular. We might remember something from childhood, but a lot of things got revealed when we got closer, about like my brothers would explain something about what had happened to him back in the day that my sister Peggy and I didn't know about. But we're adults now. So we were letting go of the old, but we're talking about what we didn't know. Because each person, if you come from a big family, each person is joining the family at a different time in the parent's life. Or if you weren't in your biological family, if you were in a foster family, or if you were living with other relatives, or maybe, I don't know, everybody has different growing up experiences. But learning those skills and letting go of the old and talking with family members is how you're going to build those skills. They don't have to know the language of Alcoholics Anonymous, but you do, because you know how to talk to people. Anybody in a 12-step program, even though you're not aware of it, you talk differently than people who are not in recovery. And you don't have to say that you're in recovery so much as people will notice it. They say, oh, it's like we're honest, first of all, I hope. Anyway, I was kind of getting off track there. And then we feel again, not just the comfortable feelings, it's thawing out time. So the family has to thaw out. They have to begin to talk, trust, and feel. And the family's members will do it at different ages and stages. So sometimes I've had like a husband and wife come into the family program with an adult child, and then the other adult is in treatment. And really the adult, the teenager sometimes gets it faster than the parents do, because the parents are well defended. They want to look good. Hey, our daughter's in treatment now. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. But then when they begin to thaw out and realize that they need to do some work, that's when things really begin. And that's when there's a lot to celebrate too. how we get goofy, how messy we get. And that's why, one of the things that we did very well, I think, at Betty Ford Center Family Program is we played with the families together. It wasn't all serious all the time. We laughed together, we cried together, we played together. And I would always encourage anybody who's here today, and I'm sure all of you know how to do this already, but you go to your meetings, but don't take yourself so seriously, and don't take life seriously. It's very brief, and we're not going to be here forever. So do the things that bring you joy, and but the and do and say the things, those uncomfortable feelings, with some safe people as you thaw out. But don't go to people who are going to judge you. Oh, you shouldn't feel that way. You see, I remember early in recovery, and some of you may experience this in any program, where we're grateful. Okay, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. I'm a grateful Al-Anon. I'm a grateful ACA. I'm recovering from depression, whatever it is. But sometimes, if you're at a meeting and you don't express gratitude, you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to get kicked out of here. I'm not grateful. I don't feel grateful. You don't have to feel grateful to act grateful. But sometimes you just have to tell the truth at a meeting about, you know what, I'm kind of a mess today. And let that be the way it is. And I'm feeling angry or sad or whatever. And don't let people impose their gratitude on you. Well, you should. Don't let them should on you. You should do this or you should do that. Allow yourself to be around safe people so you can express the comfortable feelings and the not so comfortable feelings. All right, let's go on to the next one. Be a model, not a critic. Recovery for families is about relationships and renewal. And oftentimes, I do this structured family recovery, which is done by, it's not done on Zoom, it's done by conference calling. It is a powerful modality because I could be here in California on the phone. And the thing about doing it with Zoom is wonderful too. The thing about being on the phone is you're not looking at people, what they got on or what their expression is or anything about that. And when I'm working with families that are different parts of the country and so forth and doing it phone wise and doing structured family recovery, what happens is they can renew and just be themselves in their own privacy. And the structure of it works out well. It's a very powerful modality. And Zoom is too. I've done that with Zoom people, but recovery, relationships, and renewal, we all model that. Everybody showing up here today is a model, is somebody who is made a choice to get up today wherever in the world you live and join a Zoom meeting where we're talking about family recovery and where you are a part of a family, an important part of the family. And whether you feel sad, mad, glad, suspicious or otherwise about your family situation, just know that you can be a model for what recovery looks like. So key concepts. The key concepts for family recovery is Stephanie Brown. She's a specialist, PhD specialist in family recovery. And she talks about the stages of family recovery. And the stages of family recovery on her model, Stephanie Brown, is that the drinking stage is a stage. The drinking and drugging stage is a stage of family recovery, believe it or not. And then when the person who has addiction enters treatment, or when a family member starts going to Al-Anon or starts going to a counselor, that's the second stage of family recovery because one member of the family has broken the cycle. So it's not just the alcoholic addict who breaks the cycle, but it could be the family member who gets into recovery first. But denial, of course, as we know, is the thing that is that keeps us away from our authentic selves and being able to face our trauma, being able to face our addiction, being able to face the issues we need to grow, we need to develop in our recovery. Another key concept is boundaries, and I have like a whole thing on boundaries. I'm not going to go into it here, but boundaries are so important. You know, where I end and you begin, and vice versa. And you know, and the other thing is when I've done boundary workshops, like at treatment centers or just with individuals, and we did this in family. Let's talk about one thing on boundaries, physical boundaries. Now we've got different cultures here today. I was once doing a family program where we were talking about boundaries, and I said how close you let people get to you is was a boundary, a physical boundary. So I'd have a woman on one side and a man over here. And so the guy on the guy that was doing this was from South America, and the woman over here was white. And so anyway, I told her to start walking to him, and he was to put his hand up when she got too close. So how it turned out is she walked toward him, and he didn't put his hand up. In fact, he grabbed her and hugged her. And his wife was in the audience, and he said, "That's how we do it in South America." And I said, "And that, did you ask her if it was okay to hug her?" "Oh, we don't do that there." So then we had a whole discussion about boundaries and cultures and who can hug and who can't hug. And the woman who got hugged looked startled. You should have seen her face. But that's a physical boundary. Then there's emotional boundaries, who we share our deepest, darkest secrets with. And then there's also sexual boundaries. There's fiscal boundaries. So that's a whole other workshop, boundaries, because that's really important. And then another key concept of family recovery is learning new rules. And then, of course, communication, which I talked a little bit about. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Where do we turn for support? And I think this whole group here today is a powerful example of where we go. We go to 12-step groups. And I'm telling you, there's tons of 12-step groups, and for every kind of thing, Debtors Anonymous, sexual addiction anonymous, Families Anonymous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So find a group that you feel comfortable with and go to it. And of course, our alcoholic and Al-Anon groups. Individual counseling and group therapy. As I gave that example from my own life of 4 years into recovery and really just insanely working, I needed to do deeper work, because what we do is we act out things that are unhealed. And also this is something I always recommend, if you're going to seek out a counselor, have an interview with whoever you're going to go to, okay? Ask them if they have a supervisor. Ask them what their license is and what the limitations of their particular license is, and have they ever had any kind of what's the word I'm looking for, something against their license. So somebody complained against them for some violation of their license. You need to know that before you just, I mean, you know, you wouldn't pick a doctor out if the doctor had a lot of violations of his medical. Of course, he probably wouldn't have his degree anymore. But I'm telling you, do interviews with counselors. And group therapy, same thing. But a lot of times people already know the person, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And then, of course, church, synagogue, spiritual community of your choice, some kind of spirit. Not everybody has the same spiritual path. And then spiritual retreats for couples and families. Literature and workshops is always good, whatever. One of the things I'm going to recommend for families is a book called Growing Up Again by Clark and Dawson. It's powerful. It gives you tools. It talks about uneven parenting and even parenting. It gives you specific things that you can say, "Oh yeah, that happened in my life." It gives you direction, and it gives you the developmental stages. So for instance, it'll say, what can you expect from a child from 5 to 9 years old, and then what are they doing emotionally and physically and so forth, and what can you say to them as a parent to give them support. There's even support and there's uneven support, and I know it. The structure is the firm side of care, and nurture is the gentle side of care. What are the rules in this house? What are the negotiable rules? What are the non-negotiable rules? So that book is really good. Growing Up Again Clark and Dawson. Thank you for listening, or falling asleep, or drinking your coffee, whatever.
Thank you, Mary. Wow, that was so great. All those resources, all your wisdom, just great.